Welcome to the Car Sim and Race Driver Show, presented by Hugh Hattrick. Here at Bathurst in the Forest, my very special guest, Peter Colley, Rascal, Rabbit, Josh Martin. It's great to have you back on the show. Drive fast and try not to crash. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Car Sim and Race Driver Show. And tonight we actually have a motorsport presenter and celebrity. It is Chris McCarthy. Chris, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Yes, thank you, Hugh. Thanks for having me on. How are you doing?
I'm very well and very excited to have a commentator who has been on television that you can actually see. So we're going to find out all about that and how it all started. But it's great to have you on the show. And probably our first question that always comes up is, how did your kind of love of motorsport and your motorsport career begin?
I guess the first experience I had, actually a friend of mine took me go-karting when I was probably about 12 years old. And I went to a track in London called Revolution Karting. And I loved it. First time I did it, really enjoyed it. I used to, before that, I was kind of into football, cricket as well. I did taekwondo. So I was a real sports person ever since I was probably 3 years old. Never knew I liked racing as much as I did, but yeah, I went down, loved it. And from there, I just sort of wanted to do it more and more. And eventually I then went on to race karting at a club level, national level, and so on. So I did karting for 5 years up until I was about 17 years old. So yeah, it was. I just loved it, and that's where my love of the sport came from. My family don't actually have any history in it. My dad was always a loose F1 fan, but ever since I went that first time, I watched all the F1. My first championship was when Lewis won that in Sao Paulo. And yeah, that was when I had my first year of racing, and that really got me into the sport. So
it's an amazing sport, isn't it? Especially if you've seen it live. Have you been to a few Grand Prix live as well?
I've only been lucky enough to go to one, and that was on a practice day. It was when I was working with a championship, and we had as a prize for a few of our drivers, we took them along to Silverstone. It's a shame because they did then offer me tickets for Saturday, Sunday, but I was commentating somewhere else, so I couldn't go. But I've never actually been. I used to go to. My dad used to take me to the A1 GP when that was running. We used to go to the World Series by Renault, which was fantastic because it was free. And I used to love the Formula Renault Euro Cup racing there because there was always about 40 of them on the grid. And we used to go to the DTM at Brands Hatch sometimes as well. So yeah, touring cars as well. We went to a lot. So yeah, I was quite lucky that my dad took us to a lot, but we never really went to any Grand Prix. We kind of stuck to the other stuff. Yeah,
I was going to say, because the Formula, was it the World Renault Series that you said? Because were they like a V10 engine or something? Were they like 3-litre V10s in some of those? They were quite decent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that mechanically minded, I'll be honest, but I can't remember what they were, but they were very loud and they were very fast.
I think they were based on the old V10 engines.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they were kind of like an F2 level. It was World Series by Renault 3.5, wasn't it? That's what it was called. And it was fantastic. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, and you had drivers from that were always going into F1. But they had the Formula Renaults and they had the Clios there as well. And then they had the World Series Championship. And it was, because it was free, you used to get probably about 130, 140,000 turn up to Silverstone for race day. Probably not far off. Yeah, about 120,000, not far what you would get off a Grand Prix weekend itself, because it was, you could just turn up and drive in. It was the first to turn up got in. So it was great for racing. It's a shame it ended, really, because I love to go in every year.
Yeah, no, I think Renault have done a lot for the sport, to be fair. They even came up to my old country of Scotland. They came up to Knockhill and they had a big Renault day, but the only thing that they gave us was go-karts, electric go-karts for free. So maybe a wee bit shortchanged in that one, but no, they do a lot for the sport, and it's great to see all the different championships. So you've done a lot of go-karting, which is fantastic. And then in fact, you've just recently got a new job. Would you like to tell all the viewers as to what that job is?
Yeah. So I was part. It got announced last week. I'm on the presenting team for Motorsport TV Live, which is kind of a new the first ever motorsport news channel. Much needed for the sport, I think. But yeah, it's a real privilege to be a part of such a talented presenting team. Rachel Downey, who's done loads in all kind of sports, really. Diana Binks has been, in Le Mans pit lanes and so on for years and years. And Bryn Lucas, me and him have worked together quite a lot. He's commentating this year on Super Formula for Red Bull TV. So yeah, it's a real great team to be a part of. And yeah, I'm more used to doing commentating than presenting or news anchoring, if you like. But yeah, it's great to almost step across and do that and have something in the week where you're still talking about motorsport, and then you can go and commentate on the weekend. So yeah, it's been fantastic. And we had probably our first big guest this week in Juan Pablo Montoya, and that was to have a 17-minute exclusive interview with him was amazing. And yeah, it's just going to get better and better. At the moment, we're doing 3 bulletins a day, but the plans are big for it. So yeah, just watch this space. It's much needed for the sport. I think everyone's going to really enjoy it.
And when you have to interview a big name racing driver like Montoya, do you have time beforehand to kind of prepare your questions? Are you kind of guided as to what kind of things you're going to be talking about? Or are you left with a bit of freedom to ask what you would like? With someone like him, people like that level, they're used to doing so many interviews. You don't really need to send them what you're going to ask them. You do your preparation. You decide where you want the interview to go. So for his interview, we decided to talk about the F1 and get his opinion on Verstappen versus Hamilton, which has been great. And then we wanted to talk about IndyCar because the Indy 500 is coming up, and he's racing in it again. And then I wanted to talk to him about his son, because I commentated on his son in FIA karting, and then I commentated on his son winning in Vegas in 2018, which was really cool. So he's doing Italian F4 this season, and I wanted to talk a little bit about Sebastian and how he's getting on this year. So yeah, I mean, you do prepare, but at the same time, it's like what you're doing now. You just have a conversation with them and see where it takes you. Often you'll have loads of questions written down, and then you just throw it out the window because the conversation you're having just leads you in another direction. So yeah, you can have questions ready, if you need to fall back on them, but when you just go in and speak to them, very loosely, that tends to work better, and they tend to open up a bit more. So yeah, that one was great. He's a real great guy to interview, I have to say. I think he was kind of known for that, wasn't he, in the sport when he did it? Yeah. His press conferences were quite famous. And he's a pretty straight talking guy. Yeah, he speaks his mind. So he's a great person to speak to. It's quite refreshing, actually, isn't it, to have someone who just says what they think and gives you a good answer, so that it's not the kind of party line or the company line, but he actually says what he thinks. And he was a good driver. I always think he kind of left a wee bit too early. I think he had a bit of he was in McLaren for so long, and then Williams and things, but it was Williams, wasn't it? But yeah, no, he seemed like always a very competitive chap, and he always kind of looked at F1 and you could immediately recognise who was good and who wasn't, who was the people you really had to beat and show that you could beat, to kind of be regarded as a great driver. But no, that sounds fantastic. So because you've done obviously a lot of commentary before this new job, how did you manage to get into commentary? How did all that start?
It started actually with a bit of a sad story in a way. I mean, I had to stop racing because I was diagnosed with epilepsy at 17 years old. And it was heartbreaking for me at that time. I was racing in the national championship, in the British Championships. We were halfway through the season. We were fighting for the title in a club championship, and yeah, all of a sudden, it was in August 2012. I was at a race and out of the blue had a seizure, and they diagnosed me with epilepsy they took away my race license for 5 years, and which is just a standard procedure. Like they take away your driving license as well for a year. And I wasn't far from getting my first car at that time. So yeah, it was pretty it was pretty annoying, you know, pretty disappointing for me having to, you know, walk away from racing. But I just started college doing TV and film at that time. And I went back the next month to go and watch my friends racing again. And I just decided at that moment, I think I was driving back with my dad, and I decided I couldn't just walk away from the sport. I'm useless with tools, so mechanicking was never for me. So I had access to cameras. I was doing TV and film at college, and with a couple of friends, I just sort of decided maybe we should go and film at the track I used to race at. You know, the races there never used to get filmed. I could use it for my coursework. We charged them, you know, pennies to go and do it, and they agreed to go and do it. They agreed to let us do it, and we went along, set some cameras up, and filmed the races. And we did it for a couple of months, and then there was no commentary on it, and I needed some commentary on it, and I was going to reach out to someone I knew was a commentator, but my dad kind of talked me into just giving it a go myself. So so I tried it, and yeah, I didn't know that I was ever going to be any good at it, but yeah, I actually really enjoyed it when I was doing it. It's quite funny because when I used to race, I always used to enjoy watching the other races, and I know a lot of people do that, but I don't know, I kind of just used to love watching kart racing. So for me, yeah, getting to commentate on it seemed like, when I started doing it, it seemed like actually a bit of a job I'd really enjoy. So
I mean, it's kind of crazy because I was watching some kart racing. My son is 7 years old, and I was saying, "Oh, this is the kind of thing that we could do," you know, because he's almost old enough now to do the go-karts. And most places are going to be about 8 years old before they'll let you drive a kart, in the kind of arrive and drive type karting kind of clubs that are out there. So I wanted to let him see what it was like, and he was like, you know, big eyes, because it's so fast. And it's kind of crazy, isn't it? I mean, literally the places can change dramatically within fractions of a second, because they tend to all go into the one corner almost at the same time, and they bump each other, and it's kind of very much it's so live. You kind of if you blink, almost you'll miss quite a bit of it, isn't it? It's how do you think it seems to be much faster than other sports, but you know, it seems to be that you've really how do you kind of keep up with it all?
Yeah, that's. It's pretty hard. Yeah, when you're commentating, I mean, my first live race was the British Kart Grand Prix, which is a pretty big event. So yeah, it was a bit of luck really that the guy who's done it for years and years, Henry, but couldn't do it that month. And it just, you know, happened to get asked to do it, and there's grids of, you know, 36 drivers, and you've just got to try. You sort of get into a way of picking the difference when they're all in a pack. You know, some of them sit a little bit differently in the car. Some of them hold the wheel at the top, and some hold it at the bottom. Little things like that help you recognize them when they're in a pack. You know, some drivers are taller, some are smaller. Obviously, in a car, they're all the same size and the same shape. So in karting, you have to go off their size or their posture. Or as well as the colours of the car, obviously. But yeah, I was able to pick drivers. I was actually able to pick drivers up pretty easily because I raced for 5 years. I kind of could tell the body language of a driver. I could read when they're about to make a move. I could read when they were nervous. Just through all the things I used to do, and that really helped me with commentating in it, because you could see a move coming from 2 corners away. That's probably the same for any racing driver who's done single seaters or GTs. I've often found when I commentate with someone who's done it, they can see when a move is coming from a mile off. For example, when I did Gran Turismo of Jimmy Broadbent, he could always tell just what was going to happen next. Because of his experience. And so, yeah, for me, commentating on karting was, it fitted perfectly for me as a starting point because I'd done it for so long.
Yeah. And when you started commentating, did you ever have any particular commentators that you kind of wanted to model yourself on, or perhaps inspired you, you know, in that kind of career?
Well, there was a guy called Ken Walker, and he was the Murray Walker of karting. he did everything. He was like Murray was. He was loved by everyone across the world. It's just funny they had the same last name. And I absolutely loved his stuff. He did a race called as well as doing all the biggest world and European championships, he did a race called the Rotax Grand Finals, which is a bit like the World Cup of karting. You have to qualify to get there, and you represent your country when you're there. And it's kind of a battle of the countries. Yeah, it's really cool. And you all turn up and you have the same cart. Yeah, the cart is there when you arrive. It's a bit of a party. It lasts a whole week, and it's a bit of a party atmosphere. And I used to love listening to him doing that. And I tried to base my style off him a bit. He was quite, as well as being very knowledgeable, he also had quite a relaxed tone as well. So he didn't get too excited in the big moments, if that makes sense. You know, he was able to keep calm during even big moments in a race, or when someone had a big crash. So yeah, I liked him, and as well as that, I used to love listening to Will Buxton doing GP2. I thought so. Those two for me were the two that I really, when I just started out commentating, were the two that I really looked up to, definitely. And James Allen was doing F1, and I thought he was great. You know, listening to him commentate Lewis Hamilton win the world title was great. So yeah, I'd say probably those three were the three. If I had to pick three out, that I kind of based myself off.
I always remember that race. I lived in Edinburgh at the time, and on that last couple of laps when Hamilton was behind, I had my kind of hands over my head like this, kind of waiting for it, you know. And in that final corner when he goes past Glock, and you hear Brundle shout out, "Is that Glock? Is that Glock?" It is. And he's true. And I could barely believe it. And then that was the thing. And of course, the crowd was cheering because Massa had already taken the checkered flag. And that thing, and it was kind of crazy. What's been your kind of craziest moment? Because you've been all over the world commentating for different formula. What's been one of your kind of the best moments or best places to visit and then do a race as well?
There's been, I'd say Tokyo was amazing. A place I never thought I'd ever go to. And it was Gran Turismo. I got to do a few rounds of the first year they ran the World Tour. Tom Brooks asked me to, he asked me to fill in for him for a few races. And I was quite lucky that those few races were Nürburgring, Tokyo, Monaco, and Las Vegas. So I'd say,
I miss them. We're asking him again.
Yeah, Tokyo was great because we were there for a whole week. And we had 2 days off, and me and Jimmy, we just had 2 days of these guys showing us around Tokyo, and that was amazing. It's such an amazing place. The food is incredible out there. I never thought I'd like that Japanese kind of food, but the cool thing was as well that the reason we had 2 days off is because they asked us to stay longer because they set up two events. Which weren't supposed to happen when we arrived, but they had the Toyota Gazoo racing drivers come down and race each other on Gran Turismo in front of a live audience. And they asked me and Jimmy to go and commentate it. And then they also had an event where they paired up Japanese esports drivers with Japanese racing drivers. So people like Nirei Fukuzumi was one of them, who was in GP2 at that time. And that was really cool as well, And it was a race where the rules were so crazy that it was always going to go to the last corner, and there was a big shunt at the final corner, and me and Jimmy were just laughing. So that was great, and Vegas was great. I mean, I was quite lucky with that because I was there with Gran Turismo. We were commentating in a nightclub, which was bizarre. And then there was also a race called Rock the Rio, which I mentioned earlier, which Sebastian won. And that's a go-kart race outside the Rio Hotel, which happens every year. And I happened to be in Vegas on, from the Sunday to the Thursday. And they said, well, we've got the kart race from Thursday to Sunday. Why don't you just hop on over and come and do the kart race after you're done? So yeah, it was going fresh from an after party from Gran Turismo straight to the Rio Hotel. And that was awesome because the hotel gave us the presidential suite as our
Oh wow.
You know, as our kind of hangout area, which had a swimming pool on it, and yeah, it was cool. I mean, Vegas is such a cool place, but yeah, to kind of wake up and go to the shower and hear the carts going round.
That's kind of crazy.
Bizarre. So yeah, I'd say that those two places for me stick out. Yeah,
fantastic. Well, we've had lots of questions, and I know that the guys in the chat and the viewers will be saying, "Come on, Hugh, you need to ask these questions." So I thought I had a few questions to ask you first of all, and then I thought we'll get round to asking the questions from the chat. So here we go. We've had lots of people watching here just now from all over the world, and the first one is from GT Plus Racing. It is, do you watch any particular sim racing or esports?
Well, I commentate on Le Mans esports, and I got to commentate on the Le Mans Virtual 24-hour, which was an amazing event. But I love watching the Gran Turismo events. I think they are amazing. The guys there just put on such a good show. It's a shame they can't do that with restrictions now. But having worked on it and knowing how much of a big operation it is, I'm sure any esports fan has seen that clip. I think they were in Australia, and it was a race that went down to the last corner, last lap, and they put up a video of the drivers. You can just hear the drivers, who had headsets on, so you can get their reactions, and that was amazing. I think that's personally one of probably my favorite to watch. But there's so many out there in esports. There's so many different series. It's you can stick something on every night really and watch something. There's so many to choose from. But if I had to pick a favorite, I'd say that. But I try and keep up with other esports as much as I can. I thought the Formula E was good. The race at home challenge, I liked that. F1 esports is great as well, and I liked what Veloce did last year when they did their when it was isolation and they did their series. I thought that was really cool. To see Ian Poulter racing Lando Norris. That was cool. That was really good. So I thought that was awesome. Yeah. In fact, that goes on handily to our next question from a chap called Keith Willonia, all the way from Arizona in America. He said he really enjoyed the Valencia Formula E race. He thought it was great, but everyone else seems to hate it. And what do you think? What was your view on the Valencia Formula E race? Do you think it was a good race, or do you think it wasn't so good? Well, I was really looking forward to that race because obviously I've gotten really into Formula E this year, I have to say. I think I was speaking to someone about this the other day. I think that it was a race. Personally, I enjoyed the Sunday race. I thought it was great. I think they need to do big tracks more. But as for the whole Saturday race, I think it needed to happen. I think people forget that we're over 70 years of F1 and Formula E only been going for what is it, 6 or 7 years now. So I think if these kind of problems didn't happen to say F1 when they started, I know they were very different times, but I think you have to remember how long they've been running for. They've not been going long. They're still learning. They're bringing new cars out all the time. They're still learning about it. They brought in a new reg change now to avoid that happening. And I just think it needed to happen for them to find out what it was, because I don't think you can prepare for 5 safety cars around Valencia. No one ever thought that was going to happen. And none of the teams did, and the championship didn't either. I don't think they dealt with it great, pointing the finger at the teams and particularly Felix da Costa, but I think that they've dealt with it well now by bringing in new rules, which essentially is that after 40 minutes there will be no reductions in energy. So that's going to completely stop that from happening again. So I just think it needed to happen.
Yeah. And I think I was going to say, did it go on the old Valencia Grand Prix track, or was it a kind of mixture?
It was changed. So I don't know what I
shortened it a bit.
I can't say the corner numbers, but when they do that sort of kink left and into a hairpin, that kind of became a chicane, and then they had a chicane in the middle of just at the start of the start-finish straight, which created a bit of overtaking. It wasn't the full Grand Prix circuit, but it wasn't far off it.
I think they would do really well at Brands Hatch. I think that would be
Yeah,
good.
see, that's a perfect track for it.
Either the Indy track or even the field track, maybe, perhaps.
Yeah, I think the Brands Indy track would be amazing. I don't think it would ever work at Silverstone or Donington Park, even though they've tested there. I think somewhere like Brands would be, yeah, I never thought of Brands before, but I think that would be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's quite close and they can get a really good crowd there as well. It's
Yeah.
quite easy to go to it.
Yeah.
So that would be a thing. Oh, we've got another question for you, and this is again from GT Plus Racing, saying, having worked in TV as well, without naming names, have you come across any oversized egos, either for the channel or guests? It was really bad in 2000 when I was working with Aussie Football. It says GT Plus Racing, but how have you found it?
I mean, everyone I've worked with has been it's been great to work with. Yeah, I'm not really too sure how to answer that one. Unless I'm the one that's the oversized ego. I don't know. I know. Jimmy Broadbent's a nightmare. He requests too much.
You need to push him to tell him to come on the show, because I got in touch with him a wee while ago and he said he would do it. But his secretary said it might take a wee while.
He's a racing driver now, isn't he? Like, he's in the title. He needs to come on. But yeah, he's great to work with. But no, I mean, I think any event I've ever done, you always, the whole team, you all go out and have a good time together. At the end of the day, which is always good fun. But I haven't come across anyone that's been a bit of a nightmare to work with. But maybe that's because I've not made it to the top yet. I don't know.
Oh, that's it. And have you found when you're interviewing people, especially because you've done commentary, did you have a chance as well at some of these other races to interview the drivers after you did the commentary? So were you also kind of doing like the pit lane interviews or all the kind of driver interviews afterwards? You would have a chance to meet a lot of the drivers. Yeah.
One thing I always do when I'm doing a race is go into the garages and just ask to see the drivers. One of the main reasons that is to make sure I'm getting their names correct, because there's nothing worse than saying someone's name wrong. So I'll always go around to all the drivers and make sure that, but you can find out a bit about them. But yeah, I've done like press conferences and things like that with other championships and pit lane interviews just post-race interviews that will then be added into the show. So I enjoy speaking to I think speaking to a driver straight after a race is always cool, because you can really get the emotion out of them then. So that's always good fun.
And we've got a great question here from a good friend, Jonathan. He's saying, has Chris ever inflicted the curse of the commentator on a particular driver?
Of course. Loads of times. I can't remember the last time it happened, but it's happened to me loads. Yeah. I've not got to the point where I try not to curse anyone. I think if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But I know there's been a couple of instances when I've said someone was that, they're easy going to win, and then next thing they pull into the pit lane and then it's all gone wrong for them. So, it's definitely happened to me a lot of time. I think I had one instance once. It was a world final, and there was a kid leading by, half a lap, and I said, well, he's won the race, so let's forget about him. And then he had a massive engine problem, had to come in, and it was like, wow, okay. So I think a lot of commentators now go, never say never, and that's because they've probably done that to someone at some point. So yeah,
I have to say, I started in the era in the kind of late 80s, so it was still James Hunt and Murray Walker doing Formula One, and they were always, they were immense, the two of them together doing these incredible commentaries. And I always remember watching that clip of James Hunt when I think it was Philip Alliot almost took Nigel Mansell off. I think it was in Portugal, right. and Hunt had the microphone, and he said, "Oh, and there's Alliot doing as he always does, almost crashing every time, and he totally slated Alliot, and basically said all he does is crash, and it was the one." What do you think of the kind of older style commentators like Hunt? They certainly had a place in that time, didn't they? They were so distinctive, and also people like Murray Walker. It's hard not to like his style of commentating. Were you big fans of people like that?
Yeah, I mean that it was a little bit before my time, but yeah, I loved the idea of his style. You know, like he was very casual. He didn't really I think with James Hunt, he didn't have anyone to impress anymore. He'd done all that work on track, and he just was just himself. You know, and I think if you're yourself, then that gets picked up on by the people listening to you. Likewise with Murray, he was just so passionate about the sport, and he had a unique style, didn't he, that everyone fell in love with, and he made mistakes, and he didn't really, I wouldn't say he didn't care about it, but he just acknowledged that had happened and just kept going. So yeah, I think people can get a little bit nervous about making mistakes too much, where he clearly didn't do that. He just loved what he was doing and sometimes got a bit caught up in it, but you know that happens all the time. And James Hunt just said it how it was. I think you need a bit of that. You know, you need to. Sometimes it's easy to you don't want to criticize the driver, but ultimately you have to have an opinion. If you think the move they did was bad, then you have to go and say that. You can't just, you know, because you're then going to see them in the paddock in 20 minutes time, go, oh, I don't know who's the place to blame. And you can't sit on the fence, I don't think. I think unless it's a racing incident, but I think you have to have a say and have an opinion. And if the listeners disagree with you, then that's completely fine, because, you know, there's always two sides to the story, isn't there? So
I think, was it not when Schumacher crashed into Villeneuve or tried to bump into him for the World Championship in '97?
Yeah.
And Brundle said that was a bad move. He said, the wrong place, Michael, wrong place, when he tried to hit him at the hairpin. And soon after that, Schumacher wouldn't do an interview with him for ages. And he wouldn't do it. Yeah. And so I suppose, but at the end of the day, he had to say it because it was so clearly obvious. This was a real punt to try and stop Villeneuve from winning the championship. That was his only way of doing it, you know. But so I think, and people like to know, because then they know that you're being truthful to the sport and not just kind of going along with what you think is safe. I think in moments you have to be quite daring. And that's right. And this goes on to a good question that we have here again from GT Plus Racing. It says, it sounds like you absolutely love your work. Are there any downsides or difficulties, like time management or being slightly nervous?
I mean, yeah, you know, nervous happens, like especially if you're your first time doing a championship. So I did Formula Regional. I'm doing the Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine this season, and obviously we're supporting F1 for the first 3 rounds. And I knew there was a lot of people going to be tuning into that. I didn't know there would be as many as there was, but there was a lot of eyes on it. So the first round, I was a little bit nervous. Yeah, the first time I did Gran Turismo, because we're in front of a big crowd, or I did when I was in the Autosport show and we did the Le Mans Esports. Yeah, you can get slightly nervous, but I think you have to embrace that and use that as energy to just and you just got to remember you're enjoying yourself. Yeah, but I wouldn't really say there's too many downsides to it. You know, obviously when you're doing a 24-hour race, they're pretty tiring. But it is for the drivers as well. So it's part of the experience, isn't it? So yeah, I think you have to go and enjoy it. Yeah, the traveling. Some people don't like the whole traveling aspect, going back and forward. That was a bit of a nightmare last year because it meant a lot of quarantining. But that was 2020, wasn't it? So I don't think there are. I don't think there are too many downsides. I think I really enjoy it. So I couldn't really say a bad thing about doing it.
So if there's any place around the world that you haven't been to so far that has big motorsport events on, where would you like to go? What would be your ideal kind of trips to go and commentate on?
Well, that's a tough question. I'm not too sure, actually. Have
you been to Singapore? Have you been? I think you have.
No, I know. I almost got to go there actually with McLaren, but it didn't quite happen in the end. But yeah, that would be an amazing event, wouldn't it, to go to? I'd love to go to Abu Dhabi. Actually, I just think that track looks so cool.
I think it starts in the sunlight and the sunset, and then it goes into it looks amazing. It was a few years ago when it was the Singapore Grand Prix, and it was that infamous wet race where all the action happened, and you could just tell it was going to be an incredible race because it's so humid, and then it starts to rain. And I was actually finishing a shift at work, and I was desperate to race back home to get the start. And my brother, who lives over that side of the world, texts me and he says, "Oh, guess where I am?" And when I get home, he shows me the pictures. He's in a hotel in Singapore, what about to watch the race live. And there's someone who's not even interested in Formula One. And he says, "Hugh, is it worth me going down to watch this race?" And I said, "Get yourself as close as you can. You know, of course it's worth it." So he went and he watched like one of the best ever Singapore Grand Prix I've ever been, with that big crash on the first corner with Verstappen and Alonso and everybody, Ferraris and the whole thing. So no, there he was. So, and I thought, I can't believe the one Grand Prix he happens to just turn up at. Yeah, the business there is the Singapore one, you know, and probably one of the best in a while there. But yeah, no, Singapore looks fantastic. I mean, I suppose you've been to places like Vegas, which must be absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
But how about Miami? Because they've got a Grand Prix coming up next year. That would be.
Yeah, the track looks terrible, but I mean, to go there would be great. I always wanted to do a kart championship called the Florida Winter Tour, and I almost got to do it once. But I'd say in terms of tracks, I'd love to go and do the Macau Grand Prix. I think that would be an amazing event to do. So yeah, I'd say if I had to pick one, that would probably be it. As much as I love the States and I love going to Florida, I think the Macau Grand Prix. I spoke to Alan Hyde about it, and he said just how amazing it is over there and how unique it is. I think being able to do that would be. I don't think you'd have any other reason to go to Macau other than the Macau Grand Prix. You know, it's kind of one of those places that you just wouldn't go to unless you're going there for a reason. So, that would be my probably if I could pick one now, I'd pick that.
I mean, it's so wide on the start finish straight, isn't it? And then it gets narrower and narrower. And they race GT3. I remember seeing YouTube videos of incredible races. And is it touring cars or the different types of series that go there? And you think, my goodness, it's a really packed field. And then it just seems to filter in. And if one person makes a bad move or makes a mistake, it can have a huge effect on everybody else.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you had that horrifying incident with Sophia Flörsch there, which was terrible. But that just goes to show how dangerous it is racing there. But the pictures you get from those events are incredible. I mean, I do a bit of PR work as well, and a driver I was working for raced there, and the pictures he sent me after the event were unbelievable. That really tight hairpin where overtaking is banned because it's that tight. The photographers have a really good viewpoint of that. And you just see all the big tower blocks in the background, and it looks unbelievable. So it must just be such a cool place to go and walk around, and then to see cars going around there must be something really special. So
yeah, that's the thing. And is there any budding commentators watching? Because obviously we're all doing a lot of esports here. Have you got any tips for us to help get our commentating kind of skills up to task?
I mean, I think the thing you've got if there's no opportunities, just make your own, and that's how I managed to get into it. Really, that my first commentating was an opportunity that didn't actually exist. I just kind of made it myself, like filmed it and then commentated on it. Now I was obviously lucky that I had access to cameras and I could go and do that. If you don't have that, then just commentate on stuff. I said this to someone recently. There's nothing wrong with you commentating on footage of a race. As long as you can get a clean cut of it. A sim race with you and your friends, say, it doesn't have to be seen by anyone other than yourself, but it's something to practice on, isn't it? And you can listen to it back or have someone listen to it back and see what they think. So I'd say that's practicing is somewhere to start, and then just going out there and finding opportunities that you have to be realistic about where you can start. You're going to be starting by commentating on the first thing I did was club racing, which karting club racing, which is the lowest form of karting, really goes club, national, and European and world. So that's where I started, and it was such good practice place to start because it was so intense, and I loved it. So yeah, there's opportunities out there. You've got to go looking for them, but in the meantime, do some practice. And I'd say the opportunities are never going to come to you. You've always got to go and look for them. So just be persistent with it. And if nothing's coming of it, just try other things, try new avenues, and don't be afraid to reach out to people, because I reached out to someone who was commentating at Eurosport, Tom Gaymore, and he's been so helpful to me. And it was quite funny because he took me into the Eurosport office, and then 5 years later I was in there commentating with him at the World Endurance Championship. So yeah, as long as you work hard at it, and it's going to happen. So.
Oh, it's fantastic. I was thinking, if there was a race that you could have commentated on, perhaps in Formula One or something like that, is there a race that stands out in your mind that you would think, oh, that would have been an incredible race? And you're saying, what would it have been?
I mean, I know I've mentioned it a couple of times, but I just think that Sao Paulo race, just because of how historic it now is. And I think in 20 years' time, that's going to be known as one of one of the best races because of that. Or I thought the Sakir race last year was amazing. I would have loved to have commentated on that. I loved the idea of it as well. I thought that was great. But I'd say because of their history behind it, 2008 Sao Paulo, definitely.
Yeah.
Just the amount of, I think for James and Martin and doing it, they did such a good job at being able to follow that race, because it changed.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah, it changed so many times, and then to have someone be a world champion for 15 seconds, and that was it. It just had everything. You couldn't have written that better. So yeah,
well, it was dry for most of it, wasn't it? And then the rain started to come down towards the end.
Yeah,
it was just, and you just knew that was going to set everything up, because Hamilton was barely hanging on, and that was the thing. So it would have been and I always remember at the end of the race, because he didn't get on the podium, he had to park his car miles away. And when he got out the car, and he was struggling trying to put his steering wheel back on the car, and the crowds were almost booing him. You could almost feel the atmosphere. It was this electric as he was getting out of the car and he started to walk back up the pit lane. It must have been absolutely incredible.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's probably a lot of people would probably go to the Senna era or something like that for those, but for me that was my first memory of F1, really, my first proper memory of it, and that's why I would go to something like that, because it has a meaning to me personally. So I thought it was fantastic. But my one of my dreams is to commentate on the Winter Olympics, actually.
All right,
Yeah, so it's a bit of I know it's a bit of a curveball because I'm in motorsport, but I love the idea of commentating on the Olympics in general. But I think to go and do the Winter Olympics would be really special, and one of those things you could, even if you only did it once, you could always look back on and go, that was incredible, So yeah, that's something I hopefully one day.
Well, it's the only Grand Prix I've ever been to live. Was the European Grand Prix in 1993, and that's where I saw Senna win.
Wow, that must have been cool. Yeah.
For the first, it was my 18th birthday. And,
really? That's not bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a story for an 18th birthday. That.
Yeah. So I literally just a few days before, and then I got my birthday present was the tickets to the Grand Prix with my good friend and his father. So we went down there to Donington and saw the whole thing. And it was just amazing, the spectacle of it. I saw Schumacher go off in the Donington kind of chicane at the back, the far end of the circuit.
A
few yards in front of us. And then we saw Senna come round, and then he was in second place by the time he came to us. And when he came through the Donington loop, he was up in the first. He had gone past Prost, and then that was him away off into the distance. So it was quite an incredible thing. But I imagine if you're seeing that live. And I know I saw your video when you were in Belgium at Spa, and you were halfway up Eau Rouge, telling everyone what it was like to, how steep it was, because you don't really see that on the, as much as they probably try in the coverage. You don't really get the angles and all of that. And I mean, is the atmosphere really as electric as maybe one might expect it to be, or is it something that really has to be experienced?
Spa is amazing. I mean, I was lucky when I was there with GT Open. One of the camera guys just said, like, I had to go on the Thursday, so I had the whole Friday there, and he just said, I'll take you around, in practice, so you can see it. Got me a tabard, and I stood at the fence at Eau Rouge, leaning over. Watching the GT cars go through there, and it's unbelievable. And you really don't realize how steep it is until you go and walk it. We went and walked it at the end of the day to do one of our pieces to camera, and yeah, I was knackered by the end of it. It was quite funny, actually. So this is something not many people would have ever seen, but the truck that goes round and cleans the circuit at the end of the day, goes around and kind of washes the circuit. It takes that truck 3 times to get up Eau Rouge. So, I mean, this truck is coming down out of La Source flat out, and it will go halfway up Eau Rouge. Then it will come back down again, and then it will give it a second go, and then it will get towards the top of Eau Rouge, and then it will come flying back down again, and then on the 3rd attempt, it will finally get over Eau Rouge. So, yeah, seeing a truck trying to go up Eau Rouge was probably one of the funniest moments of the weekend, actually. So
it must be, I suppose, because it can only go so fast if it's cleaning the circuit.
It's got to get to the top, but it's just, it takes it too long to go the other way. I don't know why I just didn't go the other way around, but
that's quite funny,
yeah, it was very, very bizarre, very bizarre. I never thought I'd see that, but I never thought I'd find that more enjoyable than watching a GT car go up there, to be honest. But
yeah. I remember watching a clip of it was when it's still in the V8 era, and it was from the bottom of Eau Rouge, just before they kind of go to the left. And they had somebody had stuck a camera out and was just watching them come, zip by as something else. And with those V8 engines, the noise was just sensational as they kind of zip past. And the speed, I mean, they must be doing almost nearly, what is it, about 180, 190 miles an hour, isn't it, when they kind of hit bends, or maybe even more in some cases.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like watching an F1 car. I watched the F3 cars through there, and they were very, very quick. But I can't imagine what it's like watching an F1 car go out there. So, yeah, the Marshall loved it. The Marshall team there let us kind of lean right over and stuff, and yeah, it was really special. So, seeing that was really cool.
Yeah. And what would be your ideal people to interview? Because obviously you're getting into all the motorsport. You met some already, some very famous motorsport names. Who would be the ones that you haven't met so far that you would love to interview?
That's a tough question. I mean, if the great, I'm not too sure really. I'd like to. I think speaking to someone like Jenson Button would be quite cool. I think he'd make a really good interview, particularly with the stuff he's doing now. I don't know in terms of kind of legendary names, which ones would stick out to me really.
If you met Nigel Mansell at Goodwood,
I
think Nigel would be quite fun. I think, wouldn't he? Be quite.
I think that would be great, actually. Yeah, he would be a pretty good one to interview, definitely. He's going to have so many stories to tell, isn't he? So I'd say doing an evening chat with him, for example, would be would be good, where you can actually have a good sort of couple of hours with him or so. I think that would be. Yeah, he'd be a good one to do, definitely. But if we're talking more younger drivers, I think JB would be a good one to have a chat with. I have his book actually, so that was so it'd be cool to go and speak to him. I just like his personality in the sport as well. I think it was needed at that time. I think Lando's the kind of up and coming one now that's bringing that personality into the sport, isn't it? So
I think George Russell as well is doing really well, isn't he? I mean,
he's matured very. He's a mature driver already for his age. I mean, I know that may not have shown at Imola, but I think how he handled it after was, showed his maturity. So yeah, I think someone like Damon would be quite good to have a chat with as well. I think
stories, isn't it? Amazing.
Yeah.
With something else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think he does a great job with the coverage on Sky, and I think he'd be great to chat to, definitely.
Yeah, him and Johnny Herbert, when they once did a grid walk, I think when Mark couldn't do it, and so they got him and Johnny Herbert to do it. It was the most hilarious thing I've ever seen.
Johnny's probably my new one now. We're changing live. I think Johnny's going to go to the top 100%. I'd love to interview. I think I've met him once, and he was really, really nice. I've met him. I got to interview him once actually.
All right. Wow.
At the Autosport show, and he was amazing. He was so kind. He's as nice as he is on TV.
And he seems like he's a lovely person.
Yeah, and I was only just starting out at that time, so he could see I was quite nervous, but he kind of settled me down really easily, and he was such a nice guy to speak to. So now I'm a bit further on down the line. I think to do another interview with him would be really, really good. So
yeah. Oh well, there's plenty there to keep you going.
Yeah.
And, now we've got some funny questions here as well. One is from my good friend Jonathan, who actually was with me on the day we saw Senna win in 1993. And he says, when Hugh takes me to a European Grand Prix on his YouTube revenue, which one would you recommend?
What's that? What's that? I go to a European Grand Prix.
Yeah, Jonathan says I'm going to pay for him to go to a Grand Prix or take him to a Grand Prix. And he says, which European Grand Prix venue would you recommend?
Oh, of the ones I've been to, I think Nürburgring was a good one. But yeah, Nürburgring. I'd say actually no, Monza.
Monza,
because I commentated there last year, but I can imagine with the Tifosi there, it's something special. So I'd say you gotta go to Monza for the. I mean, the two best for atmosphere are Silverstone and Monza. So if you've and if you've done Silverstone, then Monza 100%.
Yeah, I know it does look always amazing when the car goes up in the air and then they're on the podium, and then you see the Ferrari flags being lifted by the crowds and all the whole things that go onto the track at the end.
Yeah. We went out on the we were there the week after F1, and we went out on the podium to watch the start of the European TCR race, TCR Europe race, and watching them. I stood on the podium and watching them come by on the first lap was incredible. I don't think you could pay to get tickets on the podium, but to go to like the Ascari chicane or something like that, would be amazing, I think.
Yeah, I always remember from the early 90s when Murray Walker introduced the Grand Prix, and he was standing on the grid at Monza, and he was saying this is where Nuvolari and all these famous old drivers had raced over the years, and his great quote was literally, it was Grand Prix history literally oozes from the tarmac, and only he could get away with that, but it was fantastic to be ready for Monza, and then it lit up, and in the morning they tend to have that fog, that kind of dew that kind of eventually rises as the sun comes through the clouds. It seems like it's quite a place for sure. But it's been absolutely fantastic to have you on the show, Chris. I can't believe it's nearly an hour that we've been piling on the questions to you to keep all the things going. But it's it's fantastic. I was going to say we've got a few league races and championships coming up. Are you considering commentating on a lot of esports in the near future, or is your time now taken up with all this new presenting?
I'd still, I've got plenty of love for esports still. Le Mans esports has taken a bit of a break at the moment, but as soon as that's back going, I'd love to be a part of that again if they'll have me. And the 24-hour Le Mans virtual was an incredible experience. It got watched by 22 million people. It was unbelievable. So if they do that again, which I really, really hope they do, to be a part of that again would be great. But there's loads of esports out there. I think I need to try and get myself into some more now, because I love doing it. So if anyone watching fancies having me for an esports championship, I'm always interested. I think it's great. Great doing esports. The ones I've got to do have been great. I got to do the Isolation series, which was on BT Sport, which was really cool as well. I don't know if you ever saw that, but it was a crazy idea for a championship that really took off. So that's beautiful. And I just find the esports scene, the racing is always fantastic, and the people in it are so friendly as well. So you never really get a boring event. So
it's always fun. I think it's motorsport fans as well, isn't it? And I think I always say that when I've been doing when I do stream my racing as well as doing the interviews, is that I think what's lovely about sim racing and the esports is that I think it's really generating a new generation of motorsport fans, because this is almost like your way into motorsport. Whether you're racing as a sim racer, whether you're watching it on YouTube, it gets you back into the idea that motorsport is something fantastic. And then so as things open up now that thankfully COVID is on its way out, we can actually get back to see it happening in reality as well. But do you think there'll be more big events? Because I mean, obviously, before COVID, there was the big World Championships for GT Sport, and it seemed like there was more and more coming. There was the Sim conference, and it was at the Nürburgring or Nürburgring GP ring, wasn't it, in September a couple of years ago? And that had everything. They had a massive all their events going on.
Yeah.
Like, hopefully that will come back, and even more so. Do you think it's quite a rosy future for kind of sim racing events and things like that?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think 2020 really threw it into the spotlight in a way none of us could have predicted, and I think it highlighted the quality of it, and what it actually did was force the drivers to do it. I mean, some of them did it anyway. Verstappen and Norris did it anyway, but the rest of them had nothing else to do, so they started doing it as well. And I think you find that, I mean, I've come across sim races and I've looked at the grid and gone, why is there not more people watching this? Because there's like, drivers from the World Endurance Championship in this, and they're racing, just your top esports drivers or even just your top league racers in esports as well. And I think one thing the esports does is it gives the people that, didn't have the financial backing to make it as far as single seaters or something, a chance to race these guys and do it on live TV. So I think it provides opportunities for, to people that spend hours taking it very seriously. They don't have the money to race a real car, but now they can race the people who have done that and have a good time with it. I mean, even when I did Le Mans Virtual, Jenson Button said to us that he basically threw his book out the window and said to the esports driver, "You teach me everything you know now," and they became the driver coaches of the esports teams. I think the future for it's very bright. I mean, I don't think it. Obviously, 2020 made it unbelievably big. It had to come down after that, but I think it's opened the door. I think the broadcasters and the big companies are starting to really recognize what it's like. I mean, we've got a new touring car game that's been announced, haven't we? I think World Endurance have got something in the pipeline as well. So yeah, there's NASCAR have just brought out a new game, I think, and there's a new karting game coming out, and Formula E have got their stuff. So yeah, I think we're about 6 months to a year away from a real big turn in esports again. So it's going to be. I mean, see, that touring car game is going to be fantastic. So and the World Championship one as well. Yeah. And when GT Sport is able to do live events again, that's going to be amazing. So the future for it is very, very bright, and I hope to be a part of it still. That's when it does.
Fantastic. Well, one quick question before you go from Tom Pettifer. A good question has just come up in the last. It said, would you ever go back to Rye House commentating?
The guys down there are amazing. Honestly, it's called RHPK. And pro kart racing, 4 hours, and on great fun. Chaz did it. Chaz, who you had on the show, I couldn't go at the weekend. He went and did it, and he said he absolutely loved it. I couldn't make it sadly because I was getting my vaccine done, but I love the guys there. I think they're such a cool team. So. I'm definitely going to go down there and do a race some point this year.
Oh, that's great. And he also says, do you think they should make another kart racer film with the Watts Davis engine?
Yes, yeah. And if they need a new actor, they should ask him. 100%, even though he can't drive.
Oh, that's fantastic. And one last little question here. Your favorite driver of all time? I think we might know the answer to this.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not too sure who my favorite is of all time. I think Lewis is the best of all time. I'd say if I had to pick a best driver, it would be him. Just because I think now we're finally seeing his. I think people can put that it's down to the car out the window now. Red Bull actually have probably a better car than they do. And in my interview with Montoya, he did kind of say that as well. He said, we're now seeing how good Lewis is. I don't know in terms of favourite drivers, though.
Yeah, it's fun.
I loved Jensen. I always liked Jensen. I thought he was and when I saw him win the World Championship, I thought that was just amazing. So having met him and knowing how nice he is, I think I'll go with Jensen as my favourite, but Lewis is the best for me.
Yeah, because I think Jensen was so underrated. I mean, they didn't treat him well at all at Williams when he first came in, and they really gave him a very hard time. And even then at Renault as well, he got quite a hard time. But when he went to BAR and he had a pretty dreadful car, he still was consistent, and he got better and better, and eventually he won that race. It was something like a week after he went on Top Gear. He'd been on the Top Gear star in a reasonably priced car with Clarkson, and he would do anything. He would forget about World Championships. So for his first win, that would be his thing, because he hadn't won a race at that point. And then, of course, he won in Hungary from 14th on the grid. So it was something.
Yeah. That was that 2006, I think. That was an amazing race, and for British fans, that was amazing. I've never really had a favourite, but if I had to pick one, I'd say probably him, because of how he never really gave up, and then went and won the world. I mean, I know that car he had was amazing, but it just kind of
proved to make it happen, haven't you?
I think if he was around. I think the story there is he was around for that opportunity to come his way, whereas a lot of other people would have lost their head or thrown in the towel. But he was there for that opportunity to present himself, and he had a good personality, which meant that they wanted him in the team. So, I think he's definitely up there for me.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and that's what motorsport does, isn't it? And you do get these wonderful personalities and characters. And I think that's what makes it such a great sport. I do miss in some ways some of the old, because I used to watch all the old Senna and Mansell videos in the early 90s, because they used to really go into their whole history and what really motivated them. And you'd see them like Senna in his house in Brazil. He owned this estate in Brazil, and it was an amazing thing to watch. And to see what they were really like out with it all, but it give you their characters. And maybe there's a little bit of that coming back now with certain drivers kind of being a bit more revealing as to who they are and so on and so forth. But no, it is absolutely fantastic. Well, I wish you all the best. Stay on the line before we finish, because we'll have a quick chat afterwards. But we wish you all the best for your future career here, and of course with the new presenting role as well, which is absolutely fantastic. And let everyone know, how can they see you on TV? What should they do to make sure they can see you live?
Well, I'm commentating on the Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine. That is on this weekend. We're supporting F1 at Barcelona. We're live for qualifying tomorrow, and then we're racing Saturday, Sunday. So, if you go on their YouTube channel or Facebook, I'm commentating for them this weekend and all season. And then motorsport.tv, there is a whole section for Motorsport TV Live, and 3 bulletins a day for you with all your news. So, I'm next in the studio next Thursday. So, we're always doing it. It's on every single day. So, and I'd say there's an app, a Motorsport TV app. If you get that, you'll get all your news into that, and you can watch our bulletins 3 times a day. Which every day we have a special guest. So definitely tune in.
Fantastic. Well, you've been absolutely an amazing guest.
Thank you for having me.
What it's like being a commentator and meeting all these fantastic drivers and that incredible experience. But to everyone who is watching tonight, we hit the 360 subscriber barrier yesterday, which is brilliant. So thank you very much for all the new subscribers and existing subscribers who have been with us all this time. And if you like lots of interviews like the one we've done tonight, then make sure you subscribe to the channel, because we've got a big back catalogue of people like Super GT, of David Perel, of Tidgney, and many others, and hopefully others to come as well in the future. We've got Tidgney, yes, we've got Tidgney.
He's a great guy. He's a great guy.
Great, and he is very, very good. Yeah, very good. We've had Rory from Areas. We've had all the top guys, and many of the smaller YouTubers as well. Like last week we had Darren Turner, who was fantastic. So we have a really, really great range of drivers that we've interviewed, and all have been really, really good to have on the show. And we've also had the Amusantes, some of the female racers as well, and we're trying to get a few more too to come on the show. But to everyone who's been watching and who'll be listening to this on the podcast, you've been watching the Car Sim and Race Driver Show. Now, we've got you might be familiar with our kind of ending quote. It is, of course, drive fast and try not to crash. And if you do, you might just win the race at the first corner. Perhaps I could ask you, Chris, to finish off with our famous quote.
I've forgotten it already.
I'm putting you on the spot there.
My memory's that bad. Yeah.
It is drive fast and try not to crash.
Drive fast and try not to crash.
And if you do, you might just win the race at the first corner.
So drive fast, try not to crash. And if you do, you might just win the race at the first corner.
Thanks very much. Stay on the line. And to everyone else, bye just now.